Hi, friends. Today I want to talk a little bit about how we learn. There's many different styles, different approaches. Some work, some don't. Um, my intention for today is to hopefully present an idea that might spark some creativity for you and help on your journey of learning uh, improvised music and the approach to the guitar in particular on how to expand your harmonic and melodic vocabulary. So, a little backstory though, because I heard a podcast some time back, which unfortunately I do not remember who hosted or even who it was, but it's been lingering in my mind for quite a while, and I wanted to tie it into this video, and that is there was a discussion on the development of language in human evolution. And of course, the person giving the talk was saying, of course, there's many great things that have come out of the development of language, our ability to communicate complex ideas and, all the things that go with it. Those are very positive things. But a negative, a con to the development of language was that it essentially killed our intuition. And this was a very interesting point that has been lingering in my mind since hearing this podcast, and I wanted to understand a little bit more about what that was. So the development of language. I wanted to look at what is language? What is that? What do we consider it? What does the collective we consider language? So I did what anyone would do. I look it up on Google and see what it has to say. And one of the first things I found says it's the primary means by which humans convey meaning. It's the way we convey meaning. So in my mind, what that means is there's a translation layer, right? Our brain translates the sound of language, of words, into some mental image that we then portray and make sense of this concept. And so the main point being there that there's this translation layer, right? It's extremely quick, but there is this layer as opposed to intuition. Intuition is just a knowing, right? It's the ability to understand something immediately without the need for any conscious reasoning. So this idea of language sort of killing our ability to, or dampening our ability to intuit, was a very interesting concept. And I thought, well, how does this relate to music? Because many of us probably have heard that music is the universal language. And if that's true, then do we have this translation problem? And when I start thinking about that, I think, well, no, not really. So I have to look up, what is music? So I can go to Google. What one of the first things that stuck out to me was the definition of music. Music is a form of art that utilizes organized sound to evoke emotions and aesthetic experiences. Evoke emotions and aesthetic experiences. So aesthetic experiences are concerned with beauty, the appreciation of beauty. But the concept of evoking emotions kind of implies there is no translation layer. You hear a sound and you feel an emotion, right? It's much more intuitive than the translation layer of language. So what does all this mean? Well, it really, for very practical purposes of improvised music, I'm talking mostly about music that has some movement in it. I'd hate really to isolate it to a category like jazz, but jazz has a harmonic richness that may be unique to that art form. So I'm mostly talking about this kind of concept where we have some harmonic changes, melodic changes, and we're trying to deal with all of these things. Like, what are some of the ways we use to learn this musical language? Well, a lot of what I see and hear is very pattern based, and that's really great for a certain point in your development. I think most people who've been doing music for a long time would probably experience as patterns become a trap, but they're very useful to certain points. So, for example, we all learned when we're our beginner stages, we learn some simple chord forms, we learn some scales, we move those around and say, oh, we play this chord here, we move over to this position, and we play the same thing. We got a different chord, right? So these sort of pattern-based things, and that can develop into very quite advanced concepts. Like you'll hear people say things like, oh, to play on a major 7 sharp 11 chord, for example, like a B flat major 7 with sharp 11, just play a minor pentatonic starting from the 7th degree. Okay, so that's a pattern I have to remember. Okay, major 7 sharp 11, go to the 7th and play a minor pentatonic. It sounds a little strange, but it certainly works to a certain extent. Another one you hear a lot is, oh, on an altered dominant chord, go to the flat 9 and play a melodic minor scale. And then that's okay too, but again, a very strange translation, right? Go to the flat 9 and play something else. Like, why not just learn the intervals that are applicable to any given chord scale and really understand their relationship and not have to worry about all these patterns? So that's a way, and what I'm kind of proposing today is a different way than you might be used to, to learn these intervallic relationships rather than pattern-based playing. So a very, very simple example would be, something we've all heard a million times. If I play a basic A major triad, A major chord, like this bar form, the first thing most guitar players in particular, would do over this chord is play a A minor pentatonic, right? Maybe the blues scale. Well, and that is an aesthetic, right? That's the blues aesthetic. But if we look at this intervallically, some of it doesn't really make sense, right? We've got an A major, which is A, C sharp, and E are the 3 notes of the chord, but in the pentatonic scale, we have chromatic notes around that C sharp. We have a D natural and a C natural around that C sharp that's in the chord. So that's pretty crunchy, right? That's pretty dissonant. But the collective we can agree that is a blues sound, right? That crunchiness is the blues sound. It is that aesthetic. So my idea here is to present a concept of learning really the intervals rather than patterns. And there's a couple ways to do that. One is purely visualization. You don't need your instrument at all. In fact, you can practice this without it. It's probably even better. You could do it while you're riding on a train or whatever, driving. It's just visualizing the fingerboard and being able to identify, randomly choose a root note and say, if the 4th fret of the 3rd string was my root note, where is the 5th of the chord? Where is the 7th of the chord? Where is the flat 9? Where are all these intervals? What do those shapes look like? And you will have some patterns. You start to see patterns develop. Of course, we don't want to neglect the patterns, but we don't want to rely on them either. So visualization is one really helpful aspect that you can use, and you don't even need your instrument for that. Another one is really more ear training type of thing, and by no means do I consider myself a slide player, but I think this is a super helpful way to hear intervals by using the slide without looking at the fingerboard to hear some intervals. So I'm going to pick a random, I'm just going to use use this A pedal point with my freeze pedal so we can hear the drone. But I'm going to pick a random, I'll just say A Dorian or something, so we know the intervals, the root, the major second, the minor third, the fourth, the fifth, the major sixth, the minor seventh, and the octave. So I'm going to play those without really, find my root, right? There's my A, right? Now I want to hear the major second. What is that distance in the minor third? Perfect fourth. Root to the fourth. It's in there somewhere, right? Minor third, second, root. Let's go to the fifth. There's the fifth. Fifth, fourth. Now the main quality of Dorian is the major sixth, so we'll go up the scale to the major sixth. Then the minor seventh. To the octave. So one example of using the intervals to understand the chord scale, like we said, we explained, we laid out what the Dorian mode, what intervals were in the Dorian mode, but then using our ear by the slide and not looking to try to hear those, right? We're trying to hear that intervallic distance. So another maybe tougher one might be like something like harmonic minor, right? Where we have, again, the interval structure would be the root, the major second, the minor third, the perfect fourth, the perfect fifth, the minor sixth, and the major seventh. So we're flopping around the difference between the sixth and seventh in this example. So I'll go back to my A pedal, but this time I'm going to play a minor sixth and a major seventh, see if I can do that. So root, major second, minor third, fourth, fifth, minor sixth and fifth, back and forth, major seventh to the octave. So again, I'm not a slide player, but my intonation's a little funky, but it's just the idea of purely using your ear to try to really nail those pitches. So again, the concept is moving away from pattern modes of learning, because really the patterns become endless, right? Like I gave you those two examples about playing over a major 7 sharp 11 and an alto dominant scale, but there's tons of them. You'll see stuff, a lot of information about playing outside, using all these different tricks about moving pentatonics around out to get outside sounds. But why not just understand what's inside and what's outside and be able to move between them? So it's just a different way, and of course everyone has different ways to learn. I'm just thinking that this is something that's very useful for me and more liberating, because once you move away from the patterns, you start to use more of your ear, more of your intuition, and you do start to see patterns. They will appear, but you're not a slave to them, right? So that's kind of the idea, to liberate yourself from these patterns and play whatever musical ideas invoke emotions of aesthetics for you. So hopefully this was of some use for you, and check it out.